Corn is the oldest domesticated crop in the Americas, dating back some 10,000 years. And nixtamalization is one of the oldest ways of processing it. Nixtamalization is the removal of the paricarp, or outer hull, from the corn kernel. And it's what turns corn into hominy. And hominy is what you use to make masa. Masa is what you use to make tortillas. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. Make tortillas. It's the quintessential Mexican food, corn tortillas. Probably the most popular food in Mexico. And it takes only like 4 things: boiling water, maize or corn. This probably doesn't look like the corn on the cob you're used to if you're not used to working with this stuff. There are a gazillion different varieties of corn. This is just one of them. This is the stuff that you're going to find in the Mexican market when you go shopping for your maize to make corn tortillas, which I know you're going to do. This is cal. It's calcium hydroxide or slaked lime. And what its purpose is to make the water alkaline. That's what loosens the paricarp. We soak it in, we soak the corn in boiling water with cal for overnight, like 8 to 12 hours. And we rinse it in the morning and remove the paricarp. Try not to let it go down the drain if you have old plumbing. I strain it into a strainer and then throw that into the compost. But after you remove the paricarp, you end up with hominy. This is very pale, pale yellow to white. It's going to turn bright yellow after it meets up with the cal. Then after it's rinsed, we'll add salt and grind it in the food processor. And then we'll have masa with which to make tortillas. Very exciting. Oh yeah, this is 3 cups of corn, dry corn, 6 cups of boiling water, and 1.5 tablespoons of cal. Do not use your enamel pot for this. You can probably won't take the enamel right off, but it won't be good for it. This is an aluminum pot with a stainless steel lining. Oh yeah, and don't use plain aluminum either. Stainless steel or glass or ceramic are all okay. Cal is not dangerous, but you know, you don't want to leave it in, because we're leaving it in the same pot for 12 hours, it could damage enamel. And it could leach aluminum out of a pure aluminum pot, which could give your corn an unpleasant taste. So corn, water, cal, boiling water, let it boil for 5 minutes, and then turn the flame off and let it sit for 12 hours. And we're going to come back to this in 12 hours. It's been about 16 hours. The one recipe I've seen for making hominy says maximum 12 hours. Well, we're going to find out if 16 hours is too long. I suspect it's just fine. And this is what it looks like. Yeah, the kernels are still nice and firm. So 16 hours is perfectly fine. And now we're going to rinse the paricarp off. And as you can see, it's a nice bright yellow. The next step is running water through this, and the paricarp will not be captured by the colander. It's too fine to be captured in these big holes, so I'm going to use a strainer to keep it from going down the drain. Work it with your hands, squeezing the kernels through your fingers, and this agitation will peel off all the outer hulls. And as you can see, so much stuff is coming off of these kernels that is clogging up my strainer. And this isn't a very fine strainer either. There we go. Now you can see this mass of stuff. This goes into the compost. And back for another round. How do you know when you're done with this step? You'll feel it. The kernels will no longer feel slippery. kernels feel squeaky clean. Oh yeah, I even have a secondary strainer in the sink to capture the stuff that the strainer doesn't capture. And the next step is grinding it. I haven't seen any recipes that call for anything but a dedicated corn grinder. I actually bought a corn grinder thinking that that's what I needed, but no, it doesn't actually grind it up as fine as you want it for tortillas. So I use a food processor. Grinding corn in the food processor requires a really powerful food processor. So if you have a smaller food processor than this, you'll probably want to do it in multiple batches because it takes a lot of work. Oh yeah, and you also want you may need a little water, and you're definitely going to need some salt. Just a little bit of salt, maybe half a teaspoon for this entire batch. We're not done yet. You'll want to scrape down the sides and stir it at least a few times during this process, because the finer stuff will get stuck to the bottom of the food processor bowl, while the coarser stuff stays at the top. So you need to do this to redistribute everything. If you find that it's too much masa for your food processor bowl, you can even take some out at this point, set it aside, and then do it in a second batch, or a third batch, or a fourth batch. There's nothing quite like the smell of fresh masa. I grew up eating corn tortillas, and yeah, I was never a fan of corn tortillas. I found them rubbery and flavorless. It wasn't until I was probably 50 years old that I made my first batch of tortillas from scratch. And now I know why this food is so popular. I had grown up eating packaged tortillas all my life. And even tortillas from masa harina, which is the dried version of this, the instant dried version, you know, they're better than the store-bought packaged tortillas, but the smell that you get from freshly ground masa makes all the difference. As you can see, it's starting to clump. There's a nice clump. So it's now ready to add a little bit of water. The only tricky part of this process, the whole process is really easy. The only tricky part is figuring out just how much water to add. Too much water and it won't hold together. Too little water and it won't hold together. And there's no exact recipe for how much water you need to add. It all needs to be done by feel. That was probably a tablespoon. And you can even continue to add water after we take it out of the food processor. When we put it in a bowl, if it still feels too dry, we'll add a little more water. And I think we're ready to transfer it to a bowl. And here's your masa. And now we mix it up. Coming straight out of the food processor, there's still areas of very fine masa and areas of coarse we need to mix it up a little bit to get it all together. And when it starts to feel uniform to your hands, then you can clump it and see if it holds together. It should have the consistency of like a really grainy Play-Doh. And that's perfect. If it needs more water, add more water. If it's too wet, you can spread it out on the cookie sheet and let the water evaporate for a couple of minutes, then put it back together. We have a pan heating. That's pretty hot. In fact, that might even be a little too hot. Or we'll turn the flame down on that one a little bit. This is a tortilla press. I've only seen 4 different models of tortilla press. There's the most common is the cast aluminum. Those will cost you about $10. And the surface is not flat. I used to have one of those. Had to rig all kinds of paper templates to even out the surface. The wooden one, I really like this one. I've also seen machined cast iron and plate steel, and those look good, but I've never found those for sale. This one I got at a grocery store for, I think it was 15 or 20 bucks. Well worth it. You can also, if you don't have a tortilla press, you don't know if you're going to be making tortillas yourself or not, you want to experiment, just get some wax paper, put your tortillas on a countertop and press it with like a lasagna pan or something. That'll do just fine. I've got 2 pieces of wax paper. And 1 tortilla. Well, maybe I turned that down a little too much. You should hear, when you put the tortilla in the hot pan, you should hear a bit of a sizzle. Oh yeah, the pan is dry. There's no need to put oil in the pan. If your tortilla doesn't come out well when you press it, if it tears when you're trying to separate it from the wax paper, just ball it up, do it again. There's no gluten in this, so there's no way you can overwork it. And the masa, if this makes more masa than you can eat in a day, plan on making only half the tortillas today, make half the tortillas tomorrow. The masa should be perfectly good tomorrow. I would not keep it for more than a day. I've tried freezing it. Freezing it does not work. The masa doesn't hold together after it's been frozen and thawed. Maybe someone has figured out how to do that. If you have, let me know. So once the masa is in this state, it's good for between 24 and 48 hours. As you can see, these make small. Oh, you can make them bigger if you have a bigger tortilla press, but they're fairly small. The idea is to have something just hand-sized. You put your filling in and you eat it right away. And when the tortillas are done, how do you know when they're done? They'll feel drier. Don't let them completely dry out. Don't let them get hard. But they should have, you should see little brown spots from the corn scorching. And see this is you can see there's a different color. When this starts to look like that, then you turn it over. If it's sticking, like if you can't turn it, then it's probably not ready to turn. That feels done. When the tortilla is ready to come out of the pan, I have a lidded pan that's big enough for a stack of tortillas, and I put like a cotton hot pad on the bottom of it. This doesn't go on the heat. We don't turn the burner on for this. We just put the tortilla there, and the cotton hot pad will absorb the water that comes out of the tortilla, because these are still steaming. Put the lid on so they don't dry out. You don't need to knead the dough. Just form it into a ball and press it. The reason why the tortilla press is easier and more convenient than just smashing it with a glass lasagna pan is this lever puts a lot of pressure. If I were flattening it out with a plate or a lasagna pan, like I used to do, you have to put all your weight on it. Like my feet would come up off the ground because I'm putting all my weight on this pan. This gets your tortillas nice and flat with minimal effort. So what do we do with our tortillas once we've made them? Today I'm going to make quesadillas. We've got a few tortillas. We're going to make quesadillas. After you put your cheese on, it'll take a couple of minutes per side. It's good to flip them. Actually, what I should have done is heated one side of the tortilla, then turned it over, then added the cheese, so that the hot side would have the cheese on it. But this still works. I'm smashing them a bit to distribute the cheese, and I can tell that they're ready because the cheese is starting to leak out onto the pan. And once your cheese is melted, you can add some sprouts and some salsa. Or pretty much anything you want. You can eat it like this, or for presentation, we can cut it into sections. And assuming the cheese won't burn my mouth, let's see how it tastes. Yep, that's what a quesadilla is supposed to taste like. See you next time.